Welcome to Rambling Ronnie's YouTube channel. This is where I, Ronnie, talk about true crime, unsolved mysteries, and interject with any other random things I feel like talking about. Please look for me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook if you want to leave any comments or information you may have on whatever I'm discussing. This episode, I'm going to be discussing the home of Frank Lloyd Wright, an architect who built a home in 1911 only to have an employee murder multiple people in the home and then set the house on fire. I will start by discussing who Frank Lloyd Wright is. Frank Lloyd Wright was a successful, famous American architect who made buildings and structures all over the world. He may be arguably one of the greatest architects of the modern era, his career spanning several decades. With his interesting ideas and creative mind, he developed thousands of structures and hundreds of notable works that came to fruition. With his unique view on art and the world, he is admirable in so many ways. However, in his personal life, he had many flaws. We will go on to discuss that, and then the point in his life when tragedy forced him to start all over again. Born on June 8, 1867 in Richland Center, Wisconsin, Frank was born to William Carey Wright, a preacher, and Anne Lloyd Jones, a teacher. He moved multiple times in multiple states due to his father changing ministries regularly. They then resettled in Wisconsin in 1878. Frank's parents divorced in 1885, and at 18 he began working for the dean of the University of Wisconsin's Department of Engineering while he was studying at the university to help with finances in his family. In 1887, he moved to Chicago where he found success working under Louis Sullivan of Adler and Sullivan architect firm. In 1889, at age 22, Frank married Catherine Lee Tobin. They went on to have 6 children before he eventually fled to Europe in 1909 with his client-turned-mistress, Martha Borthwick. He spent time in Europe making publications of his work and gaining more international notoriety. In 1911, Frank and Martha returned to the United States. However, they were shunned by the Chicago high society, and so Frank set to make a safe haven for himself, Martha, and her 2 children. This house was called the Taliesin, a Welsh word that means shining, radiant brow. This name was chosen because of the house being built right on the brow of a hill on Frank's land that he purchased from his 2 aunts. After a bit of time, Frank managed to open a new architectural practice and began re-establishing his reputation, taking on multiple major public and international commissions. Sadly, in 1914, the tragedy at Taliesin occurred. On August 15, 1914, Wright was in Chicago regarding a public commission when he was alerted to the fire occurring. The fire was far from the worst news. 7 people were dead, including Martha and her 2 children. A servant of Frank's named Julian Carlton had served lunch to a group of Taliesin's workmen in a dining room while Martha and her children had lunch outside on a porch. Julian then barricaded the doors to the dining room and doused the doors with gasoline, ensuring for enough to pour into the room. After doing this, he murdered Martha and her children with an axe and then set the house on fire. Some of the workmen were able to break windows and escape the dining room, only to be met by Julian outside. 3 escaped this encounter, but 1 was to die in the aftermath. The victims were Martha and her 2 children, draftsman Emile Brodel, gardener David Lindblom, handyman Tom Brunker, and Ernest Weston, the teenage son of a carpenter. After the attack, Julian Carlton was eventually found in the basement furnace of a house. He had swallowed muriatic acid and had died of starvation as a result weeks later. According to History.com, Julian's wife Gertrude Carlton claimed that her husband, quote, had become increasingly paranoid in the weeks prior to the attack, even keeping a hatchet in a bag next to his bed, end quote. There are rumors as to what Julian's motive was, but Julian was never able to express himself before his death. Some rumors include that workers were directing racial slurs at Carlton, as well as other work disputes. There's also a rumor that Martha had told the Carltons that they were being let go. Gertrude confirmed that they were to leave for Chicago that night. After the fire, Frank set out to rebuild Taliesin. This was accomplished, and Frank also wed to a new love after his first wife finally agreed to a divorce in 1923. 2 years later, the second Taliesin burned down due to faulty wiring. Frank rebuilt the house for a 3rd time, and it now serves as a museum and education center. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and let me know what your thoughts are on this episode. Thank you for tuning in, and take care.